Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Detonation Point presented by Elastio. My name is Matt O'Neill, and my guest today is Hugh No. And I'm really excited to talk to Hugh. I have met Hugh long time ago, and we're going to get into the conversation on both where Hugh was, where he is now, and common sense recommendations to help you and your company protect themselves from cyber attacks. But first, a little background. So I met Hugh I first came across Hieu in November of 2011 when I was with the US Secret Service in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I was looking for an interesting case. And I had spent most of my career at that point working cases targeting bad actors who were buying or stealing and selling payment cards online. And I happened to read an article from Brian Krebs from KrebsOnSecurity.com. Shout out, Brian. And the article or the piece was called How Much Is My Identity Worth? And it talked about a website called superget.info in which the users could purchase PII, personally identifiable information, on just about every American in two forms. One was I could type in Matt O'Neill, Massachusetts, and buy all of the Matt O'Neills in Massachusetts, name, DOB, social, address, previous address, basically credit header data, if you're familiar with credit header data. And then the other one was fulls. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners are familiar with fulls, but basically, if you're not, it's everything: name, DOB, social, address, in some instances, previous address, mother's maiden name, where you worked, how long you've worked there, email address, password, everything. And so I thought, well, that's an interesting case. And so I did what most enterprising agents would do, is get online and start making purchases. Because if you're not familiar with how the federal system works, is in order to establish venue for a federal prosecution, you have to show that a crime is being committed in the district in which you're working, which in that case was New Hampshire for me. So I started buying PII and really kind of trying to understand, where did Hieu get the PII from, how much detail it was. And at the time, obviously, I didn't know it was Hieu running the operation. So what was interesting next is Hieu decided to very quickly change. He must have gotten word, and we'll ask him about it. Well, I'll ask you now. How long did it take for you to realize that Brian wrote that article?
Good question though. It took like almost 2 months
Okay.
because one of my friends she shared with me that somebody talked about my website on the ClearNet, and one of the security article mentioned about the website, and I was very shocked at first.
Yes. Well, you also changed the domain name from superget.info to findget.me, which I thought was a little bold. Was that an intentional, basically, screw you to law enforcement and to Krebs?
Not really though. I didn't have any intention about that. Because I was thinking I need to change the domain name and also like redesign the whole website, try to avoid
Okay.
law enforcement, and also change into a new domain. Because I mean, find something, you get something. That's what I mean.
Oh, I see.
And then
Okay.
I see like, oh, this TOD dot me is something
Yes.
is, yeah, very cool. But I never thought okay, you try to find me and then you get me like that.
Right. Well, I took it as a challenge. I said, okay, well,
Okay,
game on, let's go. And
maybe.
so over the course of the investigation, we came across the fact that it was Hieu that was running the website. And if you're not all that familiar with how federal law enforcement works, a lot of it is doing search warrants on email accounts, reviewing those email accounts, looking for any artifacts that could tie that person to that email account. It helps defeat what my awesome prosecutors used to say, the SODI defense: some other dude did it. How do we prove that Hieu was responsible for running that website? And so over the course of the investigation, we came across Hieu's personal email addresses, which he was nice enough to have a copy of his passport in there, and he had flight information. So we had a pretty good idea it was Hieu. The problem was, for federal law enforcement in the U.S., Hieu is located in Vietnam, and at the time, the U.S. didn't have an extradition agreement in place with the U.S., and so we couldn't really go that route. The other problem was early on, we didn't know where Hieu was getting the PII from. And so we wanted to try to figure that piece out as well, because it's really hard to figure out where stolen PII came from. It's a lot easier to find out where stolen payment cards come from, because banks do a really good job of doing what we call common point of purchase analysis to say, oh, well, these credit cards are being stolen from name the store because they've all been used at that store and then they're all used for fraud. So it made it a lot more difficult. So Hieu, walk us through, where did you initially get the PII from, and then the
Yeah.
evolution as to where it was sort of towards the end of your run as the probably the most prolific identity thief in U.S. history.
Good question. I remember back then I was searching for US identity all over the places. After a talk with my some of my hackers friend in Vietnam as a internet cafe, and then we talked over the conversation we mentioned about like US identity, social security numbers and stuff like that. So I put a lot of time, like almost a month, to do research, like information gathering, everything about US identity. And then I found out there are a list of data brokers in the US which I can target or even like try to find any like vulnerabilities and try to hack them. So at first I got into Locate Plus, one of the US data broker.
When you say got into, you mean you hacked into it?
Right, I hacked into
Okay.
them. At first, I
Okay.
just used like technical hacking stuff,
Hmm.
like hacking techniques. And back then, like not many companies they focusing on cybersecurity, so
Right.
very weak cybersecurity.
So basic
I didn't
default
get no
passwords, brute
right,
forcing, that kind of stuff.
right, or a single injection stuff to that.
Right.
So I hacked into them, and I found out, there's not much information over there. So I moved from Locate Plus to Microbuild. The Microbuild company is, I think, located in New Jersey,
That's
based in
right.
New Jersey, and gathering a list of all these existing customers logins. And I use that customer logins, and then I gain access into their account and making queries and selling into other cyber criminal.
And
That's why I opened the website,
and the
right?
website was connected directly to the, at that time, the microbuilt essentially back
Microbuild.
in. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and but it couldn't last long because they fixed the vulnerability. So I just, kind of like we play cat and mouse games. They fix
Right.
it, I hack it, so I got tired. That's why I come up with a new plan. I will falsify the documents on the identities, impersonate as a private investigator, and then I use that fake documents to impersonate as a private investigator in Singapore, and then I use that license to sign up for an account at a Code Venture company. They also a US data broker as well too. So I gained
So
the access over there for almost 2 years.
yeah, and so it's interesting again for the
Right.
listeners. So we have you basically saying, "Hey, I was hacking in," and or even back up. I was doing my due diligence and I was looking for ways to identify, obtain, and monetize stolen PII. And then I gained unauthorized access, right? And then from that point, the problem was because it wasn't consistent, then you move to a different technique, which was social engineering. And so that, which is kind of a really interesting sort of evolution. And what the most important thing I would imagine to you was probably to make sure you had durable access to the PII.
Yes. Because
Yeah,
at first, like I didn't think this is good business. Because at first I thought it's just like information identities. It's not worthy like stolen credit card or the bank account in logins in the dark web. So that's why, I when I first opened the website in the first week, I saw a lot of money coming into my wallet. That's why when I see that, I told myself, man, this is real money right there, very easy
yeah,
money. That's why, I have to find out a way, try to set up a stable account at a legitimate company so I can pay them
right.
without the need to hack them. That's why I got
Yeah.
into like off venture.
And this is prior to sort of the adoption of Bitcoin in, or cryptocurrency for payment of illegal activities. So, do you remember how people were paying you? What service they were using?
Back then, more than 10 years ago, one of the service very popular in the world of underground hacking forums was the Liberty Reserve.
Yes.
Right, Liberty
Yeah.
Reserve.
And for those who don't know, the Liberty Reserve was a Costa Rican based entity that was essentially a bank for cyber criminals. So you could anonymously establish accounts. You would go through brokers, and I believe those brokers actually were collusive and working with Liberty Reserve. And so you would send your money to a third party that would then ingest into your account. And then from that point forward, then you can buy things using Liberty Reserve account numbers, essentially like you would to a bank if you had account numbers, but everything was anonymized. And the Secret Service and the IRS CI took down that site and seized all of their assets. And then we in law enforcement were able to see the ledgers of all the transactions. So, quick question: do you think that the adoption of cryptocurrency would have been as fast as it was if Liberty Reserve wasn't taken down?
I think so too, because at that time, so many cyber criminal they kind of struggling to look for a good way to receive and laundry the money.
Right.
And at that time, cryptocurrency kind of come into place kind of at the good moment.
It
And
sure
that's
did.
why when since that time, like Bitcoin or Monero or those cryptocurrency is getting like booming in the underground hacking forums. Everybody use cryptocurrency.
Yes.
Nobody talk
And
about like PayPal or
oh
Eagle
no.
or Liberty Reserve anymore. People
Right.
moving.
Yeah, it was a very quick adoption. And I remember that I was buying PII from you in an undercover capacity, and I was buying Bitcoin at when it was at like $95 or $100 a Bitcoin.
Right.
And so
Pretty
what
cheap.
was funny? Oh yeah, really cheap.
I
It's
wish
fun.
you still have some.
Well, funny story.
Okay.
So what happened was is I had an undercover account in which the process was you would use funds from the government. I would then buy Bitcoin, and then I would provide a receipt back to the government to say I bought Bitcoin. But in those days, the government hadn't adopted to the rapid change in, well, what is Bitcoin? So most of the admin clerks didn't even know what Bitcoin was, and they thought, oh well, he bought Bitcoin in undercover capacity. It's over, right? There was no more transactions. But the reality was is I was just converting cash into digital assets in order to buy stuff from you and from other people. And so what wound up happening is I was going to do a deal, and it was actually through another Vietnamese data broker you and I have talked about several times. It was buying or selling massive amounts like of leaked data. And so I probably had 3,000 and change in Bitcoin. And then I got transferred and I turned the wallet over to a friend of mine. And when he retired, because he was one of the most prolific, best case agents ever, was the case agent for the TJX hack and all these other things.
Right.
So when he retired in 2019, he says, "Hey, Matt, have you looked to see how much is in that account you turned over to me?" And I said, "No, I have no idea." And he said, "Well, it's how much do you think?" And I said, well, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000. And he said, no, it was something like $680,000. So whenever anybody says, "Hey, Matt, have you ever made money on Bitcoin?" I said, "Yeah, I made the government a lot of money on it. I never invested in it myself, but
Oh,
it turns out." So, and the great irony was, I was then back in headquarters in the position to have to then explain to people where all this money came from, and it was because of those early sort of transactions that we did, and
oh
the
my
account
God.
lay dormant for like 5 years. So did you think when you were running that website that there was going to come a time where somebody would realize this is odd that a private investigator out of Singapore was doing hundreds of thousands of queries a
Yeah.
month? Did that thought cross your mind?
Yes,
Yeah.
right. I remember I was very worried and feeling something is not right when I received an email from Code Venture in the middle of 2011 or 12. I remember. Um, the guy he emailed me and he told why I make so many queries into the API of Code Ventures. And I told him I have to explain to him so many things. And I remember one of the things that I mentioned that I was a bit private investigator in Singapore who had like a big company like Microsoft Google and Yahoo to do background checks for their employees, right? And that time, so they just everything just become good after that. They just kind of like, let me
They
go
just went
through,
away?
right? Just
Wow.
go
I
away
did not know
and
that.
keep
I
going,
did not know that. Yeah. That's
right?
interesting. I did not know
Right,
that.
right.
Which is also interesting because Court Ventures was eventually purchased by a big data broker,
Yeah,
and then they didn't catch it either.
completely. Yeah,
Yeah, they didn't catch it for many months.
no,
And how this case unraveled. And by the way, one of the biggest things that we want to get across, I think, here on Detonation Point, and you're going to hear it time and time again, is your PII is not safe. Your social security
yeah,
number, date of birth, all of that information is completely vulnerable, as is your email address and password in most instances. So you need to freeze your credit. Hugh, am I way off on that, or do you complete?
I agree with that. Right,
So it is imperative for you to freeze your credit, your kids' credit, your wife's credit, your whoever's credit. Tell people, freeze your
100%.
credit. It's the
Right,
only way that you can materially save a lot of headache from identity theft. Because the difference between when Hugh sold your PII, my PII, whoever's PII online, and somebody used it to commit fraud, you don't get a new social security number. You don't get a new date of birth, unfortunately. You
yeah,
have to fix the problem yourself, as opposed to when your payment card is stolen, you just get a new payment card and your day moves on, not your problem. This is your problem. So you need to freeze your credit. Credit monitoring is helpful, but credit monitoring is essentially like having the security camera on your front door. You know when somebody gets in, but it might not necessarily protect you. Do you sign off on that?
yes, totally
Okay.
agree with it.
Okay. So what wound up happening was, again, going through thousands and thousands of emails, I found one email late on a Friday afternoon. As all my friends in law enforcement know, that's when you find stuff, unfortunately. I found an email that you sent to somebody directing them to pay 20 some $1,000 to Court Ventures. Who was that person?
Yeah, that's one of my money launderer. He's a professional money laundering
Yes.
service in Vietnam, and
So
he
how
helped me to converting. He was helping me to convert the Liberty Reserve currency into
yeah.
like Vietnam dong or USD.
And so how prolific and important is it, do you think, for law enforcement to go after third party money launderers?
I believe that's one of the way, very important way, because everything end up at the end of the day is money. So
Right?
the threat actor or the hacker or the scammer, they need some way somehow to receive the money, either into like fiat money or cryptocurrencies nowadays.
Eh, yeah. And so we used to always say that third party money launderers are one of the centers of
Very
gravity that
important,
enable cybercrime to flourish. Right?
very important.
Yeah.
Because
And
without
so,
them, there is without the money laundry service, there is no way for me to be able to keep doing this for years.
and
Very
that's,
difficult.
and that, yeah. And would you say that third party money launderers are equally important in nearly every ecosystem of cybercrime, from ransomware to pig butchering
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. All right.
Every need money laundry service, especially
Yes.
those professional one, right?
And fortunately, in the U.S., we have some outstanding law enforcement that operate under the follow the money sort of methodology. Where I used to always say to the agents, if you have a question, the answer is always money. So follow the money, right? There's a reason, and we investigate. When I was with the Secret Service, financially motivated cyber criminals. So the motivation's finance,
Got you.
find the money and go after
Yeah,
it. So what wound up happening was I found that email and I thought, boy, that's odd. Why is my identity thief out of Vietnam, who's selling lots and lots of PII, sending money to a US based company? So I Googled the Court Ventures and found out the very first thing that popped up was Court Ventures recently acquired by Experian. So I thought, okay, well, that is when we had a really good idea where you were getting the PII from for the bulk queries. So what wound up happening was I reached out immediately to Experian and they found your account really quickly. They were really good partners. But again, that was still one of the challenges.
oh
So the
man,
other challenge is you were still in
right,
Vietnam. And so
right.
what do you do? A lot of people would say, well, why don't you just, because they were US based domains, or
Yeah,
why didn't you just shut down the website. So can you explain to people why, if I went to your registrar, or that it wouldn't have done any good to just take down your domain?
Yeah. To me, like to take down the domain is very easy. Right. Very easy, very quick. It should be one day. But like because like I think this is still good business at that time for me, kind of like personally. I think it's still good business, and that's why I keep running this kind of business. And
Sure.
I
You
think
would just
it's
get a new
like
domain.
I still can get away because kind of I feel like, oh yeah, I'm in Vietnam, like kind
Right.
of in a safe haven, right?
Yeah. So you're in a safe haven, and if I shut down your domains through legal process, you would have just had
Right.
a new domain up in what, five
Easy.
minutes? Right.
Fun.
So what we wound up doing was, I had some experience because I had two of the best federal prosecutors probably ever, that I worked with on a regular basis. We were doing lure operations for this very reason: is how do you arrest somebody when they're in a place that we can't get to? And
Right.
so we had done operations in the past where we were luring people from Romania, and I was posing as women, I was posing as all these other things. But I knew for you that probably wouldn't have worked. Because
Right.
you were making a
Good,
lot of
good one.
money. Yes, yes. So we put our heads together, and a lot of people think, well, there's these like grand plans, and the government puts a lot of thought into these lure operations, and in many instances it is, but it's probably because I reviewed 300,000 of your emails. So I kind of knew what your pressure points were. So what we
Yeah.
wound up doing was we reached out to Experian and basically said, "Hey,
That's
shut
that.
down this account, but give me an hour." And do
Right.
you recall what
I
happened
remember
in the
that.
hour before? You got an email from somebody, right?
Yes. I got
Yes.
email from a guy from Mark.
Yes, Mark from
Right.
the UK. And
For the
what
UK.
do you remember what the email said?
Oh yeah, he mentioned that, like I heard about that your data service provider got shut down and stuff like that. So if you need data, new data like US and UK data, just let me know, I can connect you with the some of the company that I connect with, stuff like that. And then he tried to mention like he will try to he will say he say like his fan in the US want to meet me up, in
Yep.
Australia, in New York. He gave me some few options, few
Yes.
cities.
Yeah, he sure did. And then but also was the, when you got that first email, did you realize this is going to be a problem for you? Because,
I did.
yeah,
I remember when I at that time I was thinking like law enforcement already find out about this.
yeah,
And I was shocked. But at the same time, like the money just blind my eyes. I
sure.
said, man, I'm in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I just keep going. It's fine.
And you're making a
It's
lot of
okay.
money.
Right. And
Yeah.
then because I was marking up to like more than 120K per month, and then
Right.
I
It's pretty
dropped to
good.
like virtually nothing, and I was shocked. That's why like I really want to get back to that level
Yes.
again.
And at that time, what was you were making 120,000 US a month selling PII.
Right.
What was the average salary annual for somebody in Vietnam in those days?
Wow. I remember it's roughly around 150 USD.
So 100, yeah. So you were making
A lot
an
of money.
extraordinarily large amount of money in
Right.
Vietnam at the time. So then, so you get the email from Mark in the UK basically saying, "Hey, I know what you're doing. I'm going to shut you down. You have to come through me."
Right.
And then he shut you down. But you
Right.
didn't reach back out. What did you do next?
I was got some few backup option. I got a few accounts at the US Info Search. I
Yes.
remember one of the US data broker in the US, very popular.
Did you have those on
And
standby?
yeah, I
Did
got
you?
owns. I got because every time I do, I have to have some backup option.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
the Micro build, like when I got shut down, I also got backup of the Lookup Plus, and then after that the Code Venture. But the Code Venture, I also got some backup for manually searching information for my clients, and that's why the US Info. I remember the name. I don't remember the name. Like US Info Search, whatever. Right.
Right. And then
I got a few
TLO.
accounts over there. Right.
Right.
COO as well. The last one, the TOO, right?
So it's important, I think, for listeners to understand as
Right.
well that businesses, have redundancy plans, they have continuity of operations plans. You,
Yep.
as a cyber criminal, had those same plans.
Yep.
So what you're up against is organized and sort of sophisticated to a degree criminals. So do you think that a lot of folks over or underestimate the adversary? The adversary being, okay, you're on, and we'll get to the fact that you're on the good side now with us,
Right.
helping to combat. But do you think that there is, in some instances, an over or an underappreciation for the adversary?
Yes. Like you mean like sorry. So you mean like sorry, like I didn't get
Oh,
your
yeah.
question. Please
So
like
do you think that businesses generally appreciate the level of effort that their adversary, the bad actors that are trying to steal from them
yeah.
or break into their systems, are they in many instances underestimating the capabilities and the
Yeah, that's true.
motivation of finances?
That's true. Thanks for that question. That's very, very true because many hackers that I know in Vietnam, they also did the same thing as well too. Like they
Right.
they blend in very well. Not only me though. I did the same thing. Like when I did something, basically in those time of cybercrime activities in the past, I blend in LAM A, LAM B, LAM C. And one of the thing is if the system is too hard or too strict or very difficult to get in anymore, we just skip that and then we come back that later. It doesn't mean we forget about it, but we come back that later when we have the right tool, the right moment. And that's why, like when I did something like this back then, I got all the information that needed for me to run the operation when it failed, so it can switch off to a new option or a fallback option for
Right.
temporary.
So the lessons are, one,
Right.
don't be low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because
That's
to your point is if you
always.
right. So in your story, you get into some other accounts, and then Mark from the UK reaches back out to you again and says, "I see what
Right.
you're doing," because your website went back up, and
Right.
then it gets shut down again, and
Right.
that's when you started replying to Mark. Is that
Right.
right?
That's
Okay.
true. It took me
And
like almost a few months when I
yes, it
thought
did.
about Mark. I said, man, let's try contact this guy. Maybe he can help me out. But it's still feel like, something fishy going on. But at the
Yes.
same time, I really like kind of money hungry. I don't care about anything. It's just money, money, and money. And
So
that's why, I told myself, okay, let's try. It didn't hurt at all, and I will try to keep myself safe. Right.
And then you agreed to go to Guam to meet Mark. And the idea was to meet in person, finalize an agreement so you could have
Yeah,
long term durable access to PII.
that's true.
And at the time, what was, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your level of concern about being arrested? Because you had to have known you were coming into a United States territory.
Yes. At that time, kind of like I didn't did I mean I didn't do any good research about Guam, the
Okay.
Guam Islands. I never thought, it should happen like a Hollywood movie that I will get arrested at the airport. Oh,
Right.
I never thought that in a million years. I just thought that, I will come there, had a good conversation and sign off the business contract with Mark. And that's it.
Right.
I will go back to Vietnam. And I never thought, I will get arrested over there. So because, before I came to Guam, right, I had a bad feeling that if I go there, something bad will happen to me. But I didn't listen to my gut feeling. Like I just ignored that. Yeah, it's fine. It's okay.
Right.
So I just keep going. Kind of like everything is just close my eye and just telling me keep going. Doesn't matter.
Right.
That's
Well, and you were, like you said, you were making over $1 million a year,
yeah,
and now it came to a stop. And so this person who had been engaging with you for many months prior,
yeah.
and my recollection was we were not very aggressive. We were waiting for you to come to us.
That's
In
true.
hindsight, did you think that was the case on your side as well?
I think that's one of the good strategy though, because if Mark keep pushing me, to come to
Yes.
Guam or to come to the US. He also give me the option to come to Australia as well too. And
Yes, he did.
I told him, no, I don't want to go there. I know I go there, I may have some problem, you know.
Right.
So I told him maybe the best option here is Guam Island because
Right.
I was thinking it's close to Vietnam. So any bad things happen, I could run away and stuff like that.
Right. Well,
Yeah, but it didn't turn out like that at all.
yeah. And so, what a lot of people wouldn't realize is when we were throwing out places, we were already
Right,
engaged with law enforcement in those places to say,
right,
hey, can you catch him if we pitch him to you? And so, we had plan upon plan. But one of the things that we realized was pretty quickly when we were talking to the folks in New Zealand, they said, oh, he's not coming here. And then
right,
we did some research. And can you tell the listeners as to why you would never have gone back to New Zealand
right. I at first, like that's true though. I was wondering why you guys didn't
to say New Zealand?
mention
So
it. And
you went to school in New Zealand.
right, that's true. Right,
Yes. And then you
right.
got kicked out of New Zealand, right? For
That's true for
so
hacking.
right.
Right.
Yeah. So
That's why,
when we talked
when because that's why in the email I remember you guys didn't mention about New Zealand, just
right,
Australia.
right.
Because if you
Yes.
mention about New Zealand, I will feel something else. Yeah, this is something fishy going on.
Yeah. 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 So and
Very
the
smart guy.
reality is we had the luxury of time because
Right.
again, if you're it's just like what's crazy is a lot of the tactics that we used are being used and deployed every day by scam factories in Southeast Asia, which you're an expert in. And it's really just social engineering in
Yeah,
really trying to understand a person. And when you start to engage with people over time, their guard goes down.
that's true.
And how much
Mm,
of that, obviously, we've seen this huge, massive spike in scams, and we are in the era of scams right now, I
yeah,
believe. And, reports, IC3, whoever, they all report scams are out of control. How much
number
of
one
that do
problem.
you, yeah, and how much of that do you think that because people over time let their guard down on communications online? Like, what do you attribute it to?
One of the things that I always tell the people that number one thing is about data. Because a
Yep.
lot of us we been our data been shown on the dark web or been leaked kind of like
Hmm.
without our consent or without our intention at all. Like sometimes because nowadays, right, easier to get scammed because they have real time data.
Yeah. They have
Right,
everything on. They have everything on us, and also
right.
I'll ask you. I know it's true for Americans. Have a very high degree of self disclosure. We tell
Yeah,
everybody everything. What did we have for dinner last night? As if anybody cares. But we are in the era, and it started in probably 2008 with the huge increase in mobile phones. But we essentially
right.
went from people who do things to people who film things, right? And then you push that
That's true.
online, and it just becomes for me to really kind of I know you. I had to go through all of your emails, but
That's
now
true.
if you could just target somebody's social media, and you're going to learn the same things,
That's
the
true.
same vulnerabilities and things like that.
100%.
So
And the
so
thing is, you
what?
know what? Sorry to cut you off,
No, no,
right?
no.
One of the things that I've been in the past 2 years until at this point, until this moment, I saw the chance of like kind of like real-time data. I mean that the real-time data of the person.
Right,
You know what I mean is not about like your identity. Identity right now you can buy, you can search it on the dark web, right? You can buy off that from the hackers. Very easy. But the real-time data at the moment is also because they gain access into the internal system. So they know exactly what's going on at this moment or the future of
yeah,
that push. Like if, for instance, right, on the shipment that you, for instance, that you bought something on Amazon, for instance, right, and they know exactly you bought that and the post office they're about to deliver to you, whatever. So they know exactly the point that you're about to receive that, so they can be easily to impersonate as a post officer
right,
and and lure you into a scam or a phishing link. And that what happened nowadays is I see that change is going up. It is basically at we in the scam pandemic right now at the moment.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's why they
Yeah,
can easily to manipulate anybody. Even the people with high tech knowledge, they know about tech. They still get
right.
scammed. Some
Sure.
of my friends, they are hacker too.
Yeah. And I think it takes a certain person and probably many, many years of being in this game to be very cautious about everything, right? Meaning, so and it's a terrible way to live, I think, but it's also a way to stay safe is trust, but verify, or actually
Yeah,
don't trust and verify everything that you do and
verify.
everyone that you talk to. Yeah. And unfortunately, the scam epidemic preys upon people's goodness in many instances.
Yeah,
Some instances it's greed, some instances it's loneliness, some instances you name it. But
that's
it will remain a problem because of our connectivity, in my view, to social media, and it is a huge opportunity for bad actors. The attack surface has
yeah,
expanded dramatically, both for businesses and for individuals. So to put a bow on our story for now, so you get arrested obviously in Guam,
right.
and the whole I of course made the joke, fine to get me. Yeah, we did, but you made a very tactical decision early on that you were going to be cooperative.
Right.
And what was that because? Well, tell me why that was.
Because I thought that the game is over. I couldn't get
Right,
away anymore. I was thinking at that time the only way for me to kind of like fix this problem, not only of myself and also for other people as well too. Because you remember, right? When the federal court they share one of the letter from the victims. It touched me a lot. I still remember that letter. It was mentioning about her story that this victim identity get lost because of me. And
right,
then the bad actor was using that for tax return and also the choice her credit score by using that to open like fraudulent credit card and bank account, damage her credit. So she couldn't afford to buy food for her kids and also afford to buy a house and pay her apartment, whatever. So I was feeling very bad at that time. And that's why I choose, like try to collaborate and cooperate with the U.S. government to be able to not only about to solve my case, but also at same point, like
and it was our experience that when we lured people in,
right,
no, everyone cooperated because how do the SOTI defense is over, right? You can't say some other dude did it. You're in Guam. We've been
right,
talking to you. We know you're the guy that was selling the PII, and
that's true.
you're in Guam. And
Yeah,
what was so after we arrested Hugh, I took over his identity with his cooperation, of course, for 2 years. So you were my alter ego for 2 years. So I had to learn. I read so many emails that you wrote. I had to write like you. Anyway, but in those instances, you were cooperative and you testified in trials. I remember the Lance Healy trial out of
yeah.
Dayton, Ohio, and there were others, Oluwishan Adekoya. So you testified several times. And so, what was your initial sentence? What wound up happening to you as a result of the cooperation?
At first, when one of my first testimony at the court, I was feeling that, I have to be honest and sharing everything that I know, basically my story, how I was doing this and, like the what kind of techniques or the ways that I obtain the sensitive information. I mean, the PII. Then, it's just like time after time, I realized, the more I open, the better for me.
Right,
And eventually, I cooperate with a U.S. government from 2000. I mean, since the day I got arrested in
right.
2013, right? Until 2019, one of my kind of like my last testimony at the federal court in New Hampshire. I remember you was there, right?
I was.
Right. Yeah. And then I was speaking at the court, sharing my story for the whole 3 hours. And, you know, that's it. I come back to the jail and finally I got a good phone call from the public defender that he told me that I will be kind of get time served for my, you know,
And released
right,
early.
no,
How many years
release early.
early did you? How many years did that save you from federal prison? Meaning, how
Yeah,
many more years
like
did you have to do?
at that time I released in 2000 December 2019. Right? I still got like almost 7 years I have to do, right?
No, but how many more did you have to do if you didn't
seven
get
years,
released early? So, oh, you would have had to do 7 more years.
7 years more,
Okay.
7 years,
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I think that a lot of folks don't
right?
realize, especially from the perspective of law enforcement, is, and I'm not alone in this, agents don't generally care much about what happens when
Yeah,
somebody gets sentenced. Because my job was to
yeah,
present evidence to have you convicted. But the sentencing has nothing to do with me. That was
right,
something that moved on. So I asked because I genuinely don't remember. I remember you
right.
got hit with a pretty healthy, like 14, 15 years in federal prison or
14,
something
14
like
years, 14 years in February,
14. And
156 months exactly, right?
yeah, and then you get out in December of 19, and then you
Right.
get back to Vietnam. So when you were in prison, how many people came up to you to try to learn basically how to scam or how to steal PII? Was
Many,
that a
many,
pretty many? Yes. So
many.
is it safe to say that federal prisons are sort of like a college for criminals? Is that a good
For
analogy?
for Foster, I guess. I believe so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there there
Yeah.
there there are many scammers. Basically, like those from Africa. They
Right.
approached me and they was asking about my case and they were trying to be friend with me and they trying to keep in touch with me when I get home. I mean,
Right.
I told them no, no, I told them, I ate too much ramen noodle already, so don't contact me.
Yeah. But before you got arrested, had you ever had a bologna sandwich before?
No, no. When I
Yeah.
got into prison, that's what I eat. I kind of I eat every day. I mean, of course, someday a holiday or those like football season,
Right.
yeah, they might give you some chicken wings or chicken fingers, whatever. But other than that, like bologna or sandwich or hot dogs.
Right. So you get back to Vietnam and you made a decision long before you got released because one of the reasons why you got released was
Yeah,
because you were so cooperative and it was very evident to everyone that was around you that you were a rehabilitated person. And so then you come back to Vietnam and you start working basically as a white hat hacker
yep,
for the government and
yep.
for private industry. What was the thing that surprised you the most about the landscape of fraud and cyber attacks when you got out of prison?
Oh man, it kind of like change is like changing. It changes so much. I can call this evolution, like
Sure.
every evolution. Because then, right, I was doing this crime, cyber crime, technically by myself. Nobody helped
Right.
me to run this. I built everything. And when I got back home, totally different. It become more professional, like a real company. They
Yeah.
work in like a group. They have people, they have employees, they have sales person, they have technical person, and they have like the people who dealing directly with the victims. So I feel like, man, this is something more serious and a lot more money, way, way more money than
Yeah.
what I was earning before.
And the sort of the advent of ransomware took place by the
Right.
time when you were in prison as well.
Yeah.
And so can you tell the listeners a little bit about the amount of investment ransomware groups put back into their product in their organizational infrastructure?
Yes. I mean, ransomware it's got booming and kind of more developing when I got back home. And it's kind of a real business for cyber criminal
Right.
around the world. And it's a lot of money though, like millions and millions USD. But the amounts of the investment that they put into their ransomware operation is very little, not much.
Right. Do you
But the thing is, they working together. They split up the money, the profit, and some of the ransomware affiliates. Yeah, of course they got paid, but not much. But there is some kind of ransomware model as well that either you got paid as an employee, or either they will split up the money with you when they got some money from the ransom.
who do you think communicates better with each other? Law enforcement and private industry or bad guys. Yeah, so I always say that criminals operate in the gaps of communication because law enforcement might not do a great job of communicating with each other,
Yeah,
but bad guys work collaboratively together and share information with each other much better than the good guys do. Am I
that's
way off
true.
on that? Okay.
That's true though. Because you know why? What that's one of the question that I still trying to solve and trying to basically like, for instance, right? When we heard cyber criminal, we need to cross sharing. I mean, cross data sharing with country, other governments or other country to collaborate together and
Yeah,
have to move quickly, right? But a cyber criminal, there is no borders, there is no laws, no regulation, or no rules at all. They just collaborate, and everything they build on trust,
right.
and that's why. And they move very fast. If that guy doesn't look good anymore, or didn't play well in the operation, they just remove immediately. They don't care. There is no
Right.
legal boundaries. I mean, at all. So they move very quickly.
Yeah, so that, I mean, obviously that's a big problem for law enforcement because
Yeah,
we're tied to some very archaic information sharing laws under mutual lateral assistance treaties and things like that. There
yeah,
are pockets of really good, outstanding information sharing, such as Europol, and places like that, that you can see those force multipliers make a big difference, and they do a wonderful job, but it has not been scaled out,
no,
and it has not. The private industry hasn't. We always talk about information sharing, but very little of it is being done at this
yeah,
point.
that's true.
The other thing I'm
100%.
curious, the other thing about from your perspective is I think that we're fighting in many instances ransomware all wrong. When I say we, I mean businesses fight it in a manner of like, what's the most important thing? And the most important thing is how quickly can I get back up online, right? How quickly can I
Right, that's
recover
true.
from an attack? So having a lot more emphasis put on provable recoveries of your backups. Do you
That's
think if people started to focus more on that than on using, endpoint detection and
right.
monitoring, do you think that would could change the game?
To me, right, number one things to prevent ransomware is about the backup. Backup. You have to have durable backup, and the best method is 3-2-1 methods to back up your data to prevent. I mean, in the case that you got ransomware, that's your best, so I mean that's your best solution, because because look, right, hacker, right, they always finding the way to manipulate your employees to fish them, or to lure them to click a link or malicious file, right? Or even like they can get the 0-day vulnerabilities. So even then, the 0-day vulnerability ability, I mean the 0-day vulnerabilities, it can be easily to bypass the security system, even the endpoint detection and response, or any like security platform, right? Even that you have the best antivirus as well too. The same way they can buy easily to bypass that. It doesn't matter because they have time. First of all, the hacker, they have time, they have money, so they, to me, right? Because I was into this business for so long, I know that the thing is, you can, if you can do it, that thing. For instance, right, if I can do good at bypassing EDR solution, I can hire the best guy in this kind of business to do for me, and then I pay for that guy. So at this time, most likely the hacker or the ransomware operator, that's how they work. They have the best drifter, which means that this guy is just doing testing malware. Make sure this malware bypassing all the security or the EDR solution. And they have the best guy in money laundering service, right? The third parties. And they also have the best guy to negotiate with the victims, who do a good selling, I mean, who talk very good and communicate with the victims. And the last one is the one who operate the whole thing. I mean, the CEO of that ransomware operation. So that's why, like, just look at this, right? This is like a real business and working very professional. That's, and most of the time, 99% of the time, it just try to target a company. It doesn't matter how big of your company, one day you will get hacked.
Right. It's not a
So,
matter of if, but
right,
when.
right. If they
Yeah.
have time and good investment, they can do it.
Right.
It's just a matter of time. So those company with a good security solution, but they also need to have the best backup solution. That's the best way.
So we're asking the wrong questions, I think, in many instances, whether it's a board or whether or not it's leadership asking the cybersecurity professionals. In many instances, they probably ask two questions. Do we have
Right.
backups and are they updated? But those are not the right questions to
True.
ask. And it could be because, as you mentioned, cyber criminals are quick to evolve, and we are not. So we're operating off of cybersecurity frameworks that are probably outdated, that probably need to be asking a lot more details. And then,
That
in your experience, because you're in this game a lot more than I am, how much of our security posture is more mapping our solutions to frameworks and sort of essentially checking boxes than it is sort of having a more forward leaning, proactive response or protections against, specifically in this instance, ransomware?
yes. You mean like the how much the company they need to invest into this
Right.
kind of
And then it's hard to get investment or harder
right,
to get investment in things that aren't mapped directly to a framework where you can say, oh, well, in order to be compliant, we need to have
right.
X, Y, and Z. Well, that X, Y, and Z is outdated and
That's true.
is not an effective
That's one of the
strategy.
rock, right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's hopefully over the course of all of our shows, we're going to talk
Yeah,
about this on a regular basis. And the theme is what we're doing now is not working. It's not
yeah,
working in combating scams. It's not working in combating ransomware. It's not working in how we are leveraging law enforcement
that's
at the
true.
federal, state, and local levels. It's just simply not working. And the scoreboard is dollar losses are
That's true.
continuing to rise. So there was an old TV show in the U.S. Called Seinfeld, and in one of the episodes, one of the main characters, George, who was like kind of a loser, said, "For now on, I'm going to do everything the opposite of what I was doing," and then
That's
his
true.
life turned around immediately. And so, but there seems to be at least some sort of either defeatism or some this isn't going to happen to me,
Yeah,
or even just a real lack of understanding again against what the adversary is, who they are, the level of effort that they'll go into attacking your system, big and small. And then there's a whole bunch of other sort of things at play about even the negotiations. It's really easy to negotiate against somebody when you know, because you've had access into their systems, what their cyber
right,
insurance policy will pay out in a ransomware attack. I kind of already have the answer of how much I'm getting paid, right? And
right,
so again, a lot of people aren't thinking about that from the perspective of like continuing to pay people is putting more money into the system. And I get it. Sometimes these are extinction level events for businesses, but they are only extinction level events for businesses because you didn't do what you needed to do to protect your business to begin with.
that's true. That's true.
Fair? Okay.
And you know like you just mentioned, right? Most of the company right now they have so many infrastructure and server that and platform, many different platform that they've been using. Some of the platform is still very old. It doesn't adapt with the current technology or even the current for the security system to protect them. That's why sometime sometime, right? For instance, right? Company is so big, they have so many infrastructure, and sometimes they don't even remember where they left off.
Yeah.
And on-ramp system, and also like nowadays we also have the cloud system, right? So the thing is, based on what I see, one of the thing that the threat actor, especially though in those ransomware groups, they targeting like the human weakness in the system, because most of the developer or the engineer that running the system, they being overwhelmed, so many
Right.
systems that they need to handle and control and secure, and we don't have enough people. And so these ransomware operator, they will try to fish them or even like manipulate them or even bribe them for money. In some cases,
Right.
they bribe for the money to gain the asset into like internal to the internal VPNs network, right?
Yeah, which is
And
an
and also one of the things that I see that the system, right? when those systems is basically very old. They have so many vulnerabilities in not patched yet,
Right.
and they forgot to monitor that. So the hacker, they will hack these old system to get into the internal database or internal server of the company. And in some case, there is one last case that I usually see that because nowadays we depend on so many vendors, so many suppliers to protect our system. And sometimes that also one of the way that the hackers or the ransomware operator, they target those company to get inside your system.
Right.
Right. So they call
And
the we so called the supply chain attack. That's what I think.
sure. Yeah. And so what you're saying is I think, tell me if I'm off on this, is one, we've created a whole bunch of combinations of new and legacy systems that
Right.
probably don't interact together in the most efficient manner. You have end of life attacks on hardware that are often overlooked as well. And then at the same time, the human element, social engineering. Again, it goes to the scam epidemic that we have right now. The human error
Right.
is at play in nearly every attack, whether it's because of mistakes that have happened procedurally, administratively, or that the person was taken advantage of, right? Because yeah. So all right, so I really appreciate your time, Huey. I always love talking to you, my friend. Uh,
Thank you.
give us your prediction. Is it going to get worse before it gets better? What do you see when we're talking? It's late 2025,
Yeah.
2027. What's the outlook for us?
To me, the next 2 to 5 years from now, the things will get more worse because AI, artificial intelligence, got into the place that very in the right moment, and that also good for business, but also good for bad actor as well. At the moment, I see
It,
the change that ransomware operator they also using AI to improving their techniques, their malware getting better to avoid detection. They also using malware. I mean, they also using AI to create like deepfake on and also like phishing email and stuff like that. So will getting more advanced and more difficult for us to prevent.
and, yeah,
The
and it
same thing
lowers
like
the
us.
barrier to entry, right? I mean, AI
Right.
lowers the barrier. You don't have to have, you were talking about SQL injections, you were talking about
Right.
things that required some level of sophistication. Now you don't need that.
No.
And that's going to be a massive problem
Nowadays,
for us
they
going
also
forward,
having like AI automated scam system. They
right?
also having like AI automated hacking system,
Right.
and it's already there. And they've been developing and selling to each other on the dark web
Right.
and also right there on Telegram. You can buy it. And things getting more serious. This because like I told you before, right? The real-time data. That's one of the best way for the hacker to approach a person or a company and combination that with the AI artificial intelligence it become like a perfect combination
Sure.
because AI
What?
can analyze data quickly.
Yeah.
Remember, like I just talked about like you put a lot of time to read all of my email, right? Imagine that you have AI, you could be done that in a day or in a few hours
Would have
to
been helpful.
analyze my behaviors, right?
Yeah.
My habits and the way that I write the email. You can ask
Yes.
AI
Yeah.
very quickly. The same way in the cybercrime world right now. Every time I see on Telegram, they always try to use AI. Like in
Yeah.
every way that they do it. If you after this podcast, like I will send you some stuff to WhatsApp so you can see how they change it and kind of like, developing. It's kind of like way ahead of us for
Yeah.
the
I intend on spending a lot of time
right.
talking to folks on this podcast about AI because a lot of times, because I completely agree with you that it is going to get so much worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
Those that adopt to new technology and specifically leveraging AI to combat AI, and then also as a force multiplier to find places where we can't hire our way out of the problem and we can't train our way out of the problem. We're going to have to train AI models to do the job for
True.
us, and to lower the gap in time between that the good guys have and the bad guys have. Because right now the gap is wide and it's getting wider. We need to close
Yeah,
that gap and leverage the same technologies that the bad actors are doing.
that's
So
true.
yeah, we are in for a roller coaster. And my hope is, and we're still going down, unfortunately. My hope is at some point in the very near future, conversations like this and ones that other folks are having throughout this space will start to show payoff with some sort of dividends. I don't think it's going to be in the next year or 2 years, but
That's true.
ultimately at the end of the day, if you're listening and your job is to protect your infrastructure, your organization, I don't want to speak for Hieu, but I would say the thing that you would want to look at most is protecting your backups, making sure that you have a provable recovery
That's true.
to get back, and then that makes the bad actor move on to something else.
That's true.
Right. And then if you're a person, freeze your credit, freeze everybody's credit. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, freeze. You got to freeze your credit because we're talking
Good
to my
recommendation.
man Hieu, who was the
Right.
most prolific identity thief in U.S. history, who is telling us all of your information is available for sale online
Very cheap
for
price. A
less
few
than a
dollars.
cent. Yeah. Very, very
Right.
cheap. Well,
Fifty.
Hieu, thank you so much, my friend. I
Right.
really
Thank you
appreciate your
so much.
time. And thank you for listening, everybody. And we'll see you on the next
Thank
episode
you.
at Detonation Point presented by Elastio. Thank you.